face. Hind face. Front face. Hind face. Back face. And it gets your face like warmed up.
Super serious.
Where nothing fun or funny ever happens.
This is a super serious thing.
I don't even like dogs.
Super serious.
3, 2, 1, go.
Oh, it was really fast that time.
That was really fast. Holy shit.
Whoa.
Timer, go. Okay. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Super Serious Dog Podcast, where me and Courtney talk jib jabs about dogs.
Jib jabs? We talking jib jabs, Misha?
We talking jib jabs today. Sometimes we say important things. I don't know.
This is Super Serious Podcast.
People seem to like it. Dude, guess what? I have so one of my favorite things in the entire world is getting clients referred to me by other clients, especially when they're like really similar and like have similar attitudes and stuff. That's always really fun, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially when it's a client you really like. But what's even cooler is I just got a client who listens to the podcast and like also listened to my episode on the canine paradigm. And I was like, yay, I can cuss in front of you. So if you're listening to this, hey-o. I'm not going to call her out by name just in case. But
just in case.
She's got this like really cute reactive dog who is like the sweetest little muffin. And he used to be afraid of dogs like when they would bark at him. And then suddenly one day he was like, I'm going to bark this time, and then gained a lot of confidence from that. So now he's like, this is fun.
That'll do it. Also, Misha, I got to say, I just noticed your little ears that you have on. Those are so fucking cute.
I'm wearing these like little translucent, like holographic colored cat ears, and they're adorable. I was like, I'm going to wear them today. I don't know why. I just feel like it. So
Fuck yeah. That's a good enough reason.
Feel like catty.
What are we talking about today, Misha? What do we have for the people?
About going back to work with a quarantine puppy. Obviously, we've talked about quarantine puppies a lot.
Quarantine puppies.
Ways you can prevent problems. But you know what? Sometimes we're not so good at preventing problems, or sometimes problems develop that maybe we couldn't have anticipated. And so we have to work through them. And maybe, you know, now that things are starting to open up and mandates are starting to be lifted, of course, like, you know, there's some towns where like, yeah, dude, COVID was over like a year ago. What are you talking about? You know, but like in a lot of big cities and stuff like that, like that's, you know, a lot of precautions are still being taken. So people aren't necessarily going back to work full time, but I feel like that is on the horizon. And people are just kind of wanting to travel more and do more things. And
just go out and about, which in turn means there's more people out and about that your dog hasn't seen crowds of people in a while.
Exactamente. So, so we're going to talk about ways that you can kind of prepare them for that and mentally prepare yourself for that too. Because one of the things that like sucks the most is when you get all excited and you're like, I'm going to do this, or you don't think about it and you're like, cool, I'm going to start going back to work 3 days a week, or go into the office 3 days a week.
No big deal.
In a couple weeks, no big deal. And then it turns out it is a big deal
for your dog.
Just planting that seed that, you know, there's going to be stuff to work through. One of the biggest things that Courtney and I tend to see is a lack of resilience and independence and just a general clinginess that occurs, right? Maybe not full-blown separation anxiety. There's obviously a lot of that. And if you are dealing with like some serious separation anxiety where there's self-destructive behaviors or just destruction in general, or like true panic happening, call a trainer, right?
Yeah.
This is more like, oh, my puppy's just kind of whiny and doesn't like it and he's throwing a tantrum, right?
Or it needs to be touching you all the time and it's just really all up in your business all the time.
Follows you to the bathroom, right? That kind of stuff. Like they're not there yet, but that's the breeding grounds, right? Those are the precursors. Those are the things that tend to happen beforehand. So one of our favorite techniques is tethered decompression.
Yeah.
You want to explain tethered decompression, Courtney?
So you tie your dog to something. There. It's explained. No, I'm kidding.
Done. You
Done.
put a leash on your damn dog and tie it to something.
I mean,
that's not you.
Yeah, in the most basic form, that is what you do. Yeah, but it's more than that. It's allowing the dog its own space to soothe itself, to settle itself while you go about your business, walk into another room, get a glass of water, sit on the couch and look at your phone, what have you, and the dog learning to exist 6 feet away from you or 10 feet away from you. It seems like a really small thing, and you're like, of course, my dog lays over there on the floor sometimes. Like, they can exist away from me, but that's different.
When they choose versus you choose.
Right. You choose and you set that limitation of no, for the next 2 hours, you're going to hang out over here on your bed with a bone. You can choose to chew on the bone. You can choose to lay on the bed. You can choose to scream your head off. But regardless of what you choose to do, I'm not going to come save you. I'm not going to come interact with you because you are okay. I know you're safe. I know you're well taken care of. There's no reason for you to panic, is the message you're trying to send to your dog.
Granted, if your dog gets like exceptionally tangled in their leash,
save your dog. Help your dog if they're super tangled. Not if their one foot is kind of caught.
Yes.
They're probably okay. But if they do that spinny thing and it gets around their back leg and they start to really freak out and bite the leash, go over and help them calmly, fix the situation, and then just walk away.
Walk away. Don't pet them. Don't be like, go boy. Don't give them a treat.
Don't tell them it's okay.
Keep it neutral. Just keep it super neutral. You're there to like facilitate, right? Because obviously, especially if it's like a young dog, right? Or if it's panicking, or maybe it's had a situation where it's been caught and it was injured or something like that. Obviously, you want to help them, but be as neutral as possible. We can't stress that enough, because it's already rewarding enough that you're going over there to help them. Right, just your presence is such a heavy reward that we're trying to basically keep the volume turned down on that reward as much as possible.
Dogs are smart. Okay, if they know you're going to come over every time their foot gets a little wrapped in the leash, they're going to manipulate you to come over. I've had dogs do it. They'll figure it out.
Yes, they will.
You need to be more neutral about it and maybe let them figure it out. Let them see that it's not actually a reason to panic. Again, if your dog is actually really tangled, please help them. Your dog could hurt themselves.
Yep. Keep an eye on your dog too. Make sure they're not chewing on it. But again, dogs are smart, and some are very manipulative. And if they notice that, like, hey, every time I chew the leash, I get some form of attention, even if you're like, hey, stop it. Right? Consider maybe getting like a lightweight chain leash. Like if you have a medium-sized dog, get like a chain leash that's meant for like a Chihuahua or like a small dog, right? Like don't get like one of those super thick ones that's practically like, a chain
super heavy. Yeah.
Right. Like,
or get coated cable.
Coated cable is another alternative. If your dog is a big chewer, though, I caution against coated cable just because
they can get the plastic off. Yeah.
If they get through the coating and then they keep chewing on the wire underneath, that wire can splinter a little bit. And then you've got like pokey wires.
Yeah. If your dog's a big chewer, I definitely recommend going with chain and then also giving them something to chew on.
Yes.
Give them an outlet for that. Because it will help them soothe themselves.
Yep. In some cases, you can coat your leash in like stuff like that discourages chewing, right? They make sprays for that, like bitter yuck spray. There's some dogs that don't care. Some dogs also like spicy stuff, right? So one of the things that people always recommend for like cables when you have a puppy is like jalapenos or paprika or something like that, like just rubbing jalapeno juice on there. But I've literally tried to do that with some dogs and they just like steal the jalapeno out of my hand and eat it. So, and then their stomach is totally fine. So you never know.
I have a trick I learned about the bitter apple spray, the bitter sprays that they sell. Okay, so if you just spray it like on something you don't want the dog to chew on and the dog discovers it on its own, there's a pretty high chance the dog will be like, this is pretty delicious. It's not that bad. But if you spray it on what you don't want them to chew it on, and then while they're not paying attention, you come up and you spray it in their mouth and they have an adverse response to it. Of like, oh my goodness, that is a terrible taste, so intrusive. Whoa,
and it's really intense.
And you allow them to go drink some water, rinse it out, like Don't let them suffer. Give them a treat.
Don't pour it down their throat.
Right. Just one, like they're very, sensitive. So like, don't do a lot. But that adverse, kind of like, what am I trying to say here? Single event learning.
Yeah, totally.
Next time they come across that smell, they'll think, oh goodness, I do not want that in my mouth. And they won't chew that thing. Right.
I wonder if because a lot of those spray bottles tend to be like a mist.
Right.
And I could see that. Like, I don't want to get it in like a dog's eye or something. So I wonder if you could just pour some of that into like a small squirt bottle, put it on stream mode and use that instead. That way you can be a little bit more targeted and go right into their mouth. But that's a really good idea though. I hadn't thought about that because like you said, single event learning, but also you create a stronger association with it.
Right.
Because I've definitely had plenty of dogs just lick it
up. Just be like, oh, this kind of tastes like apples, I guess. Or whatever,
Or this kind of tastes like my butt, which isn't that tasty. So
right. There, in my opinion, there does need to be a sort of a negative association with that spray if it's going to be effective. Anyway, I don't know how we got to chewing on stuff.
Well, because we're talking about chewing on the leash for tethered decompression.
Gotcha.
That's why.
That makes sense.
But that can also be, a handy tactic for potentially like if your dog is chewing up the carpet near the base of the door, if you close them in another room, or, the baseboards or window frames or whatever, that kind of stuff. But honestly, for that kind of stuff, the best intervention is just intervening.
Just watch your dog.
Right? Watch your dog crating, etc. Right? That kind of stuff.
Usually crating would be the next thing on my list for the, preparing your puppy or your COVID dog. It's not even really just the puppies. It's all the dogs.
Yeah.
Your COVID dog for you going back to work is to start crate training. That way your dog has a safe place, not only for them, but safe so they're contained and can't hurt themselves, place to relax.
Yep. And if you don't have a crate that fits your dog anymore, or you're like, man, my dog's probably fine. My dog's an adult. I've had him a long time. I didn't get him during COVID. You're not out scot-free. This can affect any dog, especially if they already are a little bit high strung or they've always been a little bit clingy. Even if you haven't really changed much, but your routine has changed, right? That's still going to impact them when you suddenly go back to work, right? So yes, bust out that crate. If you need a bigger crate because maybe your puppy has outgrown it or anything, sometimes Craigslist has them for cheap. Right now, crates are super duper cheap. Before I moved, I wanted to sell a bunch of them because I'm like, hell yeah, I'm not gonna get full, top price for it, but I could sell it for a decent enough to make it worth my while to go through that effort. But no, crate prices have in kennels have gone way down.
Really? I haven't bought kennels in a while.
That's last I checked, right? And that was 2 months ago before I moved. So, so I was like, well, this isn't even worth it because anything that was for sale on Facebook Marketplace or whatever was dirt cheap. And it's I'd rather just give this away to a neighbor who needs it or something, Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist. If you want a brand new crate, they seem to be a lot cheaper. Don't go buy them from pet stores because pet stores will have an insane markup because it's one of those necessity items.
Yeah.
Whereas food and other things, there's so much competition that can kind of control the prices a little bit. So it's better to get it from places like Academy or Chewy or Amazon, whatever, that kind of stuff. But the other thing too, is you can see if your neighborhood has a buy nothing group, which I'm a huge fan of. Buy nothing is basically this. It's supposed to prevent stuff from going to landfills and promote kind of getting to know your neighbors and sharing hyper locally. So long time ago, you'd be like, oh shit, I'm baking a cake and I need to go borrow a cup of sugar. So you'd go knock on your neighbor's door and be like, hey, can I borrow a cup of sugar? Now the idea of that,
fucking wholesome.
I know, right? Now also that idea gives some people anxiety thinking about that, right? Oh my God, I'm gonna go talk to my neighbors. What the fuck? Right?
Me, I'm one of those people.
So it kind of like helps you get to know your neighborhood. They're all in these like little clusters of maybe like a few neighborhoods if it's a small group, or if it's really grown a lot, it might just be one neighborhood. But it's really cool because you can also ask for like services too. Like, I'm pregnant and my husband's out of town and I just bought this crib that was just delivered and I can't lift this heavy ass box. Can somebody come over and just help me bring it inside so it doesn't get rained on? Or you can be like, hey, I have this old crate. Does anybody want it or need it? Right. And you get to like pick and choose who needs it or wants it. So you can ask for stuff on there. And it's really cool. It's like it's a wholesome thing. It's not everywhere. Facebook is the primary platform for it for right now. But you can use that as a resource too, potentially even for like dog sitting, or if you need a buddy to go on walks with you or something with your dog. That kind of stuff. Just check it out. Sometimes like they sprout like little dog groups, little neighborhood dog groups out of it.
That's so cute.
But obviously it's all volunteer / just community led. So somebody who lives in your neighborhood is the one kind of orchestrating and like moderating, but there's not really a lot of moderation that has to happen. So anyways, back to dogs.
Yeah. Fucking buy nothing group ad.
I know, right? Sponsor me. No, I'm just kidding. It's a nonprofit, so you don't have to. But yeah, so basically one of the biggest and most important things, if you can't tell, is being away from you, right? Finding routine times to crate or tether your dog and just completely ignore them. And they can be in the same room as you, just not touching you, not next to you, not cuddled on the couch, not touching
getting
you,
any of your attention.
Right. And if they can bark and whine, whatever, just turn up the volume on the TV or keep vacuuming or whatever the case is. And especially like going in and out of the room, I like to specifically choose activities where I'm not always sitting in the same room. Like,
Misha,
I'm going to go upstairs.
Do you want to talk about why you would ignore the whining and the barking?
Because essentially dogs are really smart and they know that their behavior has consequences, or they learn really strongly from figuring out consequences and correlations, right? They're very observant. They're very, you would call it operant, right? They are well, I'm not going to go into too much detail, but basically, if they learn that whining and that fussing and that carrying on gets attention from you, certainly if it's positive attention, like, oh, it's okay, buddy, calm down, you're fine, right? Very soothing, very calm, very like, yeah, it's okay, I love you, right? They're going to learn, cool, acting like that gets me this, and I want this. So what's going to happen? That behavior is going to be further reinforced. But if they very quickly and almost immediately learn that their behavior does not impact your behavior at all, they're going to learn very quickly, like, well, this didn't work. Let me try a different button. And one of the things that you can do is you can really focus on like, okay, they finally settle down and kind of go, you can then acknowledge them and be like, good job, right? Don't go over to them, but you can give them like a quick little acknowledgement, little verbal praise, if you will. Mm-hmm. Sometimes if you go over and pet them, it'll just spool them up again and they'll just start the process over. So it just really kind of depends on the dog, but
which I do have to say, if you're starting on like an extreme end of the spectrum where your dog is losing its shit for like 20 minutes or more, then absolutely go back over there, spool your dog back up, because your dog needs to work through that cycle a lot. Yep. And it also needs that reinforcement and encouragement that that other button does something. Yeah. So in those cases, a lot of times I will go over and acknowledge the dog the moment it settles down, full well knowing that me getting up and going over there is going to amp the dog back up. I'll still give a calm, good job, and then I'll walk away and I'll let the cycle start over. Yep. And within couple hours, couple days, whatever, for that dog, what do you know? That cycle's much faster. And the dog's like, hey, if I lay down and chill out, the lady definitely thinks it's awesome. So
yeah, exactly.
I'm going to do that.
But like for most dogs, right, that aren't on the extreme, even if you think your dog is extreme, it may not be, right? There's definitely, a fine line. But for the most part, like your dog's probably not in that category and doesn't need that
probably not
validation, right? Right. The other thing that can kind of help as an interim, like some people have those like Furbo remote treat dispensers / camera systems. Or if you have like a treat and train or some other remote treat dispenser, those can be really helpful because you can be like totally ignoring them and hit the button and then a treat gets dispensed. And so they don't think it's necessarily tied to you. Some dogs are smart and know what the remote is, but most of them are fairly unaware. So building as much resilience away from you, not tied to you, not glued to you, any of that kind of stuff, even though you're still technically present in the house is going to help, right? Like you going out into the backyard because you're like going to go, I don't know, dust the rugs or something. I don't know what people do. Maybe you're just like carrying trash out, right? Or you just broke down a bunch of cardboard boxes and you have to make a few trips. Like stuff like that can be really helpful as well. Because you can come back in and check on your dog, but like you're also practicing leaving and them just having to deal with that emotion. So cycling is super important. It's something I've been explaining to clients a lot more lately is like, kind of like we talked about self-soothing, but more importantly, cycling, right? Like when I'm at the doctor's office, like I have my own cycle when I'm waiting for stuff where I'll be like, I'm going to play around on my phone and then I get bored and I just like sit and I just put my phone away and I'm like, cool, I'm just going to like stare at stuff and people watch. I'm like, okay, now I'm bored. I'm going to go look at my phone again. And I have this very like specific cycle that I go through in that specific environment. And so dogs already have their own cycling modalities, like when they're socializing, when they're, or at least they should, right?
A well-balanced dog.
Right. If you have a dog who doesn't cycle well, that's obviously a skill set they need to work on. So, yes, it's part of a well-balanced diet.
Yeah.
With all your vitamins. So yeah, that's going to be like the number one biggest ticket item is just resilience and being able to deal with you being away. And it's going to have such an impact. In fact, one of my clients that I saw today, we're on like lesson 3 out of 4. And they're like, I don't need the 4th lesson because like, it was just simple things like tethering for their puppy that made such a difference because they would do like crazy zoomies and be this terror and like mouth all over them. And I'm like, you just need to have dedicated tether time and also be able to use that tether as like a nope, it's time to calm down. And then sometimes use the crate too. But she had an incident where her mouth got stuck on the crate. And so we were like, we're not going to use the crate too much yet. We want to reestablish that as a good thing. And then we'll come back to
if your dog struggles with the crate, I recommend a lot of tether decompression because it needs to learn to soothe itself. And yes, dogs can hurt themselves trying to escape a crate. So letting them figure out those cycles within themselves outside of a crate is the first step to them figuring it out inside the crate.
Yep.
And that's more of a confinement phobia thing.
Yep, exactly. So the other component of going back to work and that kind of stuff is like, we've all kind of gotten really comfortable with maybe you have a routine, maybe you have a very set routine that might change a little bit, but for the most part, not too much because it's like, it just kind of naturally fits in with whether or not you're going to the office, or maybe it was something that you were doing already before you went to started working from home and you just never changed it. So now when you go back to the office, it's going to be the same thing, but really kind of evaluating like, what is your routine with your dogs? Do you walk them kind of in the afternoon just because you can, right? Because you just kind of base it on like how your meetings have gone that day. So sometimes it's at 10 in the morning. Sometimes it's at 2 in the afternoon. Oh, well, it's raining and blah, blah. So like how flexible versus rigid is your schedule, and kind of projecting like, okay, well, if I do go back to the office, what time will I likely have to go? Right. And this is assuming you have an office job, right? You may not have an office job. You may have more of like a shift schedule type thing. But providing some sort of routine and kind of preparing your dog for that, certainly if you know it's going to be a drastic shift in what you're already doing. You can't possibly know exactly what your schedule is going to be sometimes, and I get that. So like, don't be like Lee always goes into the office on Tuesdays, right? But he didn't know that a few months ago. That just started happening like a month ago or something like that. But didn't really matter because we always walk our dogs in the evenings after he gets off work anyways, when it kind of cools down and whatever. I might take him for an afternoon walk, but that's me. My schedule's weird and I'm all over the place, so it doesn't really matter.
Right.
But as much as you can, just trying to be proactive and like really thinking about what is life going to look like when I do have to go back to doing things, whatever it may be. I think that's pretty clear. Do you have anything to add to that?
No, that's you.
Cool.
You should definitely look at what your routine might be like and start to adjust for it before you have to, and figure out where the holes in your shit are going to be, and then try to patch them before you have to. Yep. Even though I do say some brilliance comes out of necessity, you don't want to always lean into that. You also want to help yourself and your dog be as prepared for whatever's coming up as possible.
And I had a lot of my puppy clients too, like, because like they have usually have a lot of meetings in the morning, or they know like I may go to work for like half a day or something like that. Or I like to run errands in the afternoon. They would crate their puppy during like the first chunk of the day or the second chunk of the day, just to get it kind of A, part of crate training, but B, just to kind of get them acclimated to like, yeah, I'm going to be able to come home for lunch, but I need them to be comfortable in the crate for at least 4 hours straight. Right.
Yeah.
So starting to
I just thought of something else that I wanted to throw in this episode of if you are increasing your dog's downtime, crate time, tether time, etc., because you're becoming more busy, then you need to also make sure you are fulfilling your dog deliberately in the time you are spending with them, the time in your life that's allotted for them, through various forms of enrichment. And by enrichment, I mean more than a walk. Or making a walk more interesting.
Not a walk where you're just like on your phone and being like, oh, come on, quit sniffing shit. Like, let them sniff.
Let them sniff. If you're not going to pay attention, let them check their shit too. But with some dogs with behavioral complications, behavioral issues, whatever you want to call it, they're not able to handle that kind of freedom. So you need to be more present. And if you can't be present on that walk because you need to check your phone, then you need to start to look into short 5 to 10 minute, whatever, enrichment exercises you can do to fulfill your dog in the time that you have.
Yep.
When you can be present and you can do deliberate things to help them.
Yep. If you have questions about that, you can always message us too, because we can give you a list of enrichment activities or send you some YouTube videos or whatever, because there's so many different ways. It can be, playing with them with the flirt pole, playing tug,
nose work, food work.
Nose work, or like honestly, scatter feeding is really, really easy and really fun if your dog's food motivated. And you have a good space to do that. Like I love doing it in grass and gravel personally. Or if but
putting bottles in a box and having them dig in there, make a mess, get crazy.
Yep.
Hiding the box so they have to find it and use their noses.
Ooh, that one's really fun. Yeah,
and I like that one because you get to like amp the dog up. Everybody wants to like throw a party for their dog all the time over the cute face they made that they have no control over. Like throw a party for your dog because they found food in a room using just their nose. Yeah. Like that's something to be proud of. I can't do that.
Maybe if it was like a really smelly, yummy, like Philly cheesesteak or something, you could, but I don't know.
I'm hungry.
Dude, I almost got a Philly cheesesteak the other day and I was like, no, Misha, you should learn your lessons. No peppers and onions for you because it fucks up your acid reflux real bad.
Because of your baby. Now
baby.
I really want a Philly cheesesteak. We have to record a whole nother episode and I can't have a Philly cheesesteak.
Well, you'll just, have to delay that gratification. Bummer. I don't want to.
It's hard.
We have a few more minutes. Let's talk about, people going back into public now, right? Because there's some people that have been going out and about and still doing things outdoors. But I know a lot of people who are like, I am ready. I am ready to go back out into the world. And it's been
I'm going to take my dog to the brewery.
Yes.
It's going to be great.
Don't start at the brewery. Don't start there.
Don't start there.
Just start where you can control space and you're not drinking and you're not around a bunch of other people who are drinking, right? Yeah. Start where you can really kind of control distance and maybe there's some distractions. So
a parking lot. Home Depot.
Yes. I was going to say Home Depot and then I had somewhere else too in mind. No, you're good. Like Tractor Supply Company is another good one. Yeah, so there might be dogs there. Yeah. Yes. Feed stores are good. Bass Pro Shops usually allow dogs, that kind of stuff. Don't go to like Bed Bath and Beyond or anything yet, because you don't know if your dog's going to be chaos incarnate, and there's delicate breakable things there. So
that's why I like places like Lowe's and Home Depot. They have really wide aisles. So like if you need to move a dog away from something, you have the space to.
Yep. And start in the garden section, right?
Always.
Or start really start in the parking lot. Because if you can't get engagement from your dog and they're just too stimulated, right? Like, and you don't even go inside.
Don't go in that garden center. Don't do it.
Just kind of like park over by where like the sheds are, because they're usually kind of off to the side where the grass is or something.
These are dog trainer pro tips, by the way.
Yeah, this is what dog trainers do. And work on engagement, work on some of that basic obedience, right? Like you probably taught your dog sit and down and whatever during quarantine. See if you can get that from them. And if it's a really big struggle, get like 1 or 2 reps and then be like, yay. Or if you can't get that, just effing play with your dog. Just
or
run
just
around.
be there. If your dog's like freaked out, just stand on the leash. Just be there. Just be there.
Just exist. Take it in.
Take deep breaths.
Let you stab the Q-tip.
Stab the Q-tip, guys. Stab the Q-tip.
Oh, what a great acronym. I love it. But yeah, like really just kind of meet your dog where they are and don't try to force them into a situation that you or your dog isn't ready for. Because also on the flip side, if you're kind of having a little bit of a panic attack because you haven't been around that many people and maybe it's a really nice day and everybody's buying all their like summer stuff that they want to plant and it's just really busy, right? Like don't go in there, right? Because that's just going to travel down the leash as well, right? Or maybe you're just too excited because you haven't seen people and you're like, oh my God, this is amazing.
and on top of that, you're like, I want my dog to be friends with all these people. Even, you have a super friendly dog that does like to meet people and you have often let it meet people in the store. Maybe start by not.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's a privilege it earns once it remembers that you're a part of the journey.
Yep. Sometimes I'll tell people like first 10 people that ask, or first 5, it kind of just depends on how busy it is. But like first handful of people that ask, can I pet your dog? You say, no, thanks. We're not ready yet. But like, if you see me, when you're done shopping or come back in like 10 minutes type of thing, some people will come back. They'll be like,
yeah, because you'll see the same people in the store again. And they'll be like, hey, how's it going? Are you ready?
How about now?
How about now?
And not everybody does. But that's a valuable lesson for your dog to learn, is that they're not a local celebrity. All these people are not here for them. Right. And that you are more important than all those people.
Because did y'all know that there are people out there that don't like dogs? And they go out in public. Yeah. They go out in public and they don't want to meet your dog. They don't want your dog to sniff them. Even if you have the friendliest, sweetest, cleanest, nicest, whatever dog, they don't want to meet it.
There are some people who have been traumatized.
Yeah. And you know what? That's another thing you can stab the Q-tip about, because that's not about you. That's about them. Mm-hmm. And your dog's not going to be the one to change their mind, probably. So just let it go. And don't let your dog invade their space because, oh, he's friendly. He invades everyone's space. That's just what he does. That's your responsibility.
Don't let him do it. Cool. Well, hopefully these tips have helped you. There's definitely a lot of other little nuanced things, but I think those are kind of like the big main 3 things. And certainly just being able to like self-soothe, cycle, and not be glued to you. That's going to have a really, really big impact. Like I said, I had a client that was like, I don't need my last lesson with you. Sorry. Because I did too good of a job. But that's how powerful. That's how powerful that technique can be, right? It's not always the case. Like sometimes there's a lot that we have to unpack and work through.
Yeah, I fixed a dog. I don't fix dogs, but like I solved this person's issues in one lesson by working on engagement and doing nose work. Yep. And the reactivity stopped. We didn't even work on the reactivity.
Wow.
It just went away.
That's awesome. That's very rare.
It was a hunting dog that was reactive to moving stuff.
That makes sense.
I was like, let the dog hunt.
Yeah. Engage that part of their brain.
Yeah. And then be like, okay, don't hunt right now. Don't hunt the bikes. Like, and the dog's like, okay, Like, it's the coolest fucking dog. It's super sweet. Like, no bad
awesome.
intent in the dog.
Yeah, sure.
All right. Anyway, bye.
Okay, bye everybody. Thank you so much for listening. We really appreciate your support. If you want to support us financially, you can go check out our Patreon, patreon.com/super serious dog podcast. You can also write us a review if you can't support us financially. You can tell your friends about us. You can do all kinds of cool shit. So thank y'all so much for listening, and we'll catch you next time. Bye.
Bye.